Welcome to the If You Could See Me podcast. Thank you for joining the movement. I'm your host, Erin Mahone. I'm an author, storyteller, facilitator, and mental health professional. I like to talk about big things, ask difficult questions, and challenge the ways in which we perceive ourselves, one another, and what's possible in the world. On this podcast, I speak to thinkers, makers, feelers, and folks fighting for change. You'll experience entertaining, thought-provoking conversations with people from all walks of life. I believe that mental health is health, and it goes so far beyond conversations about illness, medications, and treatment. Our mental health is essential to living our best lives, and I want to live in a world in which we talk about emotional wellness as easily and frequently as talking about the common cold. We aren't there yet, but I believe we can be. When I set out to create this thing, I had no idea what I was doing. Just that I wanted to share my story and I hoped I wasn't alone. I've discovered that so many people need to find solidarity. They need to know they aren't alone. Well, I'm here to tell you, you are not alone. We can have these difficult conversations in the light of day. We can laugh, joke, and get serious about making change. I've tried to create multiple entry points within this movement, and I hope you will take some time to check out all of our resources and consider sharing your story on our website, ifyoucouldseeme.com. There you can submit your story, find mental health resources, submit ideas or resources yourself, read the stories of other brave warriors, find out about future live events, and invite me to speak or give a workshop in your area. If you're inspired by what we're doing, I hope you'll consider helping out by visiting our Patreon page, patreon.com/ifyoucouldseeme, purchasing my book, rating and reviewing this podcast on iTunes to help people find us, or just send me a message to let me know how this project is impacting you, ways we can improve, and future podcast or blog topics. This was only an idea until amazing people like you joined me in bringing it to life. Enjoy the show. Hello, friends and family, and welcome to another episode of the If You Could See Me podcast. I am your fearless leader, Erin Mahone. I'm always trying to be creative. Those never sound like they're supposed to sound. I am so excited to be here today with the incomparable Valley Haggard. Valley is a writer and a coach and a guide through the universe of personal narrative and the founder of the Life in 10 Minutes project and a wonderful human and a mom and a wife and generally phenomenal person. Have I made you uncomfortable enough?
I'm like, I can barely look at you now. I'm trying. Thank you. I'm practicing. Thank you, Erin.
You're welcome. You know, it's so funny that you just said that. My bubby, my grandmother, used to tell me, just say thank you, Erin. Just say thank you.
Right.
I'm like, I don't like it when people, I like it when people give me compliments, but I don't know what to say when that happens.
Thank you. It really does a lot. It goes a long way.
It's the very best thing.
Is.
So we are sitting in the sacred space right now of the Life in 10 Minutes project, which you very graciously and generously sort of invited me to be a part of a little over a year ago. And
that's right.
So much amazing work happens in this space. But before we kind of get into how this became a thing, I want to know how Valley became Valley.
Oh.
So, paint me a picture of Valley, 10-year-old Valley on a Saturday afternoon. What was she doing?
Reading.
Yeah?
Reading.
Yeah.
Reading. Well, I was a huge reader, and when I was 7, I told my mom I was going to grow up to be a famous reader.
A famous reader?
Yes. Because I loved reading, and that's what I wanted to be. That's
awesome.
what I wanted to do and be known for. I also, around those early years, I had a whole lot of AA meetings with my stuffed animals. I'd line them up in a circle, And we would have meetings. It would be my Papa Smurf and my Snoopy and my marionette that I had and all these stuffed animals, and they would talk about their drinking problem and one day at a time. And I called my best friend sometime around there and told her I was going to be her sponsor because I grew up in the back of AA rooms.
You did?
I did. I was the little kid in the back of meetings. And so that was kind of a lot of my play was based around recreating meetings and trying to sponsor people, which is so funny. Sponsor my friends.
And now that's basically what you do.
It's really funny. It's funny.
Like in your life.
I taught school too to my stuffed animals. I had a chalkboard and I had some hand-me-down high heels. And I just taught.
And you were a teacher.
School. Yeah.
Because teachers had chalkboards and high heels.
Yes, that is what they had. And if my parents could always tell what kind of teacher I had because I just repeated everything they'd said through the day. Some days I just yelled at my stuffed animals. And they knew I had a yelling teacher. And,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow, so you were processing your world in such an external way.
Yeah, right.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm sorry. I'm fascinated by that just because, I did everything in my room, very quietly. And I did all that stuff, but no one could ever hear me.
Oh, yeah.
And I was very silent and processing, because there was probably just sort of multi-generations of growing up with people with pretty significant mental health stuff and all of that. So there was just a lot of shame and a lot of don't tell and not, don't say this to this one because it'll upset them or, not keep my secret, not in a super severe way, but just sort of you were never sure what was okay to say out loud.
Right.
So I find that completely fascinating.
Well, recovery actually is something that my parents, my mother particularly, was very proud of. And she was very open about it and never really tried to keep it a secret.
Right.
Anonymity for her is important within certain contexts, but she never tried to hide her own recovery, and she talked about it with me a ton, and she actually kind of put it out into the world a lot because she really wanted it to be accessible to as many people as possible. And so I had both of my parents were very open always about talking with me about anything.
Right.
So I could have all kinds of conversations and child play and stuff with them.
Incredible.
For sure.
It's so amazing when I talk to people because immediately I just am transported back to my own childhood and I'm thinking how is this different than what my experience was and how just it's not comparing so much, but it's just thinking about the ways in which different people process their world.
Right.
And when we talk to each other about this stuff that nobody ever talks about, we kind of learn so much about the human process, the human condition.
I was lucky. Yeah, I was lucky.
That's really amazing. I always felt like I could talk to my parents if I had a problem, but the process of, it's different when your parents are different externally than they are sort of in the house.
Yeah,
and
right.
So that sounds like you had sort of very outward, your mom was who she was wherever she was.
She still is. She just is who she is. My dad's much more of an introvert, and he doesn't go around advertising himself in any way, shape, or form at all. But my mom's very kind of out there. Yeah.
So what did that kid who was reading and reenacting AA meetings in classrooms and ultimately seems like you embodied that kind of helper vibe.
That is true.
Did you see that in yourself?
No. My awareness of that is fairly recent. My awareness of my kind of codependency or I'm gonna save you, fix you, help you, teach you, lead you. Or I have always had that component, but my awareness of it is a lot more recent.
Right. And so that brings me to really sort of very naturally the blog post you put up this morning, where I was just like, how serendipitous that she is talking about codependency when she gets to talk to me this afternoon on this podcast. So in particular in that post, which I will put in the show notes, and so everybody can find it and all of that. But you talked about something that I think so many of us struggle with in our relationships, in our grown-up relationships, which is if you, person that I am in a relationship with, would just be completely different, then I would be happier, and that would make things so much easier for me. I mean, I love you.
Yes.
But please don't be yourself out of it.
Right. Please change.
Please be completely different.
Change everything.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, there's a musical, I think. I love you, you're perfect, now change.
Oh, that's so funny. Mm-hmm. Well, it's like something that I feel like we grew up hearing that we can't change other people.
Yeah.
I knew that intellectually, but I don't really believe it in my heart at all.
Right.
That I couldn't do it, that I shouldn't do it. I really felt like I should do it. Mm-hmm. I should drag someone along to their spiritual evolution, even if I wasn't going myself. Like, I really did almost feel like a moral obligation to do that.
I need to show you.
Even though I would say, like, you can't, I could spout it off. You can't change people. You have to accept them as they are. But I could not actually live that at all.
And so what was the progression for you that allowed you to get to that place? And
really, hitting a bottom. The only way I learn with anything is enough pain. Yeah. Pain is my great teacher. Mm-hmm. And just getting into so much pain in my marriage because I was pushing and fighting and trying to get my husband to change. Mm-hmm. And, of course, that made him resist me. Right. Why? If only you wouldn't resist me. And
I can't imagine.
And really kind of,
it must feel so good to have someone telling you constantly that you're not okay.
I know. I would, if he ever said anything like that to me, it would have been like Armageddon. Right. He never did. He always has accepted me, or on a rare occasion where he might make a helpful suggestion.
You're like,
bleh! Yeah, like, no! How dare you?
We are the same person, Valley.
Right.
I seriously felt like I almost showed it to my husband and said, see, I'm not the only woman who tries to do this.
Right. It is, I guess, I think it does get deeply ingrained. I don't know what codependency is exactly. Mm-hmm. What kind of weird form it takes and why it's so prevalent, and maybe it more in women. I'm not sure, but
I think it's definitely more in women because women tend to be made socialized to make other people's happiness more important than their own.
Of course, that makes so much sense.
If you're not happy, then I must be doing something wrong.
Right. Of course that makes sense.
Right?
Yes, of course that makes sense.
So then we're constantly, our identity is tied up in serving other people.
That's so true.
And men don't have that responsibility.
Right. They're not given
often.
That for the most
Sometimes,
part.
I mean, certainly there are exceptions, but ultimately it is, you know. And so so you talk a lot about, when you were younger, going into recovery yourself and sort of being in that chaos place and, then coming to the moment where you decided you needed to go into recovery.
Yes. Yeah. I was 23. I actually didn't decide to get sober. It kind of happened by accident. Mm-hmm. My life was a train wreck. Like, there was one guy who wanted to kill me. I was like miserable, crying all the time, and I had done some really like Jerry Springer type things. I was lined up for the show, or I should have been. It was like great tragedy / Jerry Springer kind of things in my life happening.
Never a dull moment.
Right. And I really recognized, I got this letter from this ex-boyfriend basically saying if I didn't send him back all his stuff, he was going to come and get it. And like, he'd called my mom and said he wanted to kill me or himself. And it was just a mess. Oh. And I was like, I got home to this like 30-page letter from him, just filled with hurt, pain, and hatred. And I thought, wow, I need to go into therapy. And so I told my mom that I wanted to go to therapy. And she said, well, I know some therapy that's free. And I said, oh, yeah? And she told me about a Friday morning women's meeting of AA. And I said, but do you have to think you're an alcoholic? Because I wasn't an alcoholic. And she said, well, you can wonder. And so I went to that AA meeting on the premise of it was free therapy. And I ended up picking up a white chip at that meeting because I identified with every single thing I heard. Like everything out of anyone's mouth. I was like, that's me, that's me, that's me. But I didn't plan to pick up the white chip. It was like something in me other than me went and picked it up. I don't know how. And then I'm crying and crying and crying. But I felt like since I didn't think I was an alcoholic, I'd give the chip back the next day. I was like, well, I'll just return this tomorrow. Like, I'll come back and give it back to them. Because I'm not
here. I'm not of this place.
I'm not really an alcoholic, but I went home that day and sat in my backyard. And I remember these wild series of revelations, like that I associated a certain kind of alcohol with every period of my life. Like starting with the Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill years.
Oh, I remember them well.
Yes. And then the Mad Dog 2020 years, and then the Schlitz malt liquor years, and then the Carlo Rossi big jug of wine years, and then the box of wine years, and then the whiskey years, vodka. I mean, and I associated my life with what kind of alcohol I was drinking, and then I realized that like everything bad that had ever happened to me had happened while I was drinking, and that my parents were both alcoholics, and that I was pretty sure a lot of my friends were alcoholics as well, and I drank with them, but I just didn't drink as much as they did. I was sure they all drank a little more than me, but it was this sort of like, wait a minute. And I thought, maybe I'll go back tomorrow. And I went back the next day and I didn't give my white chip back. And then I just kept going every day. And somebody said to me, like, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck and looks like a duck, it might be a duck. Yep. And I was like, but it still took me for almost a year to say I was an alcoholic, because I just didn't see how somebody so young could actually be an alcoholic. But looking back, man, I had already made such a mess of things in not very long amount of time, and I loved drinking so much, and it made me so sick, and I loved it, and I did it over and over and over again, like no matter what the consequences were. So over the years, the more I've talked about drinking and the way I still think about it, like when I see someone else drinking or whatever, it's so clear that I'm an alcoholic, because normal people don't spend so much time thinking about drinking or other people's drinking, having drinking dreams all the time, and that kind of thing. So anyway, it was 23.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so it's been 20 years now.
And so what do you know now that you didn't know then?
Oh gosh, what don't I know? Well, I mean everything.
Right.
Well, I mean, I guess so many things.
Yeah.
I mean, 20
years is a lot.
20 years, whether you get sober or not, you learn a lot. I mean,
right. But what do you think you know now that you wouldn't have learned if you hadn't been through that? If you hadn't stopped drinking, if you hadn't come to this place.
Okay, that's great. You know? Well, drinking is such a way of escaping your feelings. Right. It's such a way of not feeling, and actually I found so many other ways of not feeling while sober. Right. I mean, of course. There's a million ways to numb out and not feel, and I think people with addictive personalities are really great at finding so many different variations of them, but I really am, the thing that I'm learning the most is to try to have my feelings, the full spectrum of feelings, and not run away from them, not have to do something to blot them out quite so much or quite so fast. Yeah. So
when you think about this place, as you sit in this place that you, with a host of other people have sort of built together, that has become a space for people to do exactly what you just said.
That's true. Yeah, to sit with your feelings.
And to show up to I've got chills thinking about that, like on my face, have goosebumps.
Wow.
And just the idea that you didn't just sit with your emotions and learn how to be more, like, you gave that gift to hosts and hosts of people.
Thanks, Erin.
Who talk about you. I mean, the way people talk about you is incredible and well-deserved.
And the way they talk about you, too.
Well, thank you. That's
way.
very nice.
Yeah.
That's very nice. I think that you and I are kindreds in a lot of ways. And we probably were young people with lots and lots of too many emotions and didn't know how to process them and chose to learn how to be inside of our bodies in ways that ultimately were destructive because just being was real hard.
Yeah, it's true.
And we didn't have the language and we didn't have the understanding or whatever it was. But now, we walked through that fire.
Yes, indeed.
And now you sit in this space that is a place for, like, people's ghosts live in this building.
Yes, yeah, right.
So what brought you here? How did you were always a writer, you were always a reader, like what said, where did life in 10 minutes bloomed from the sky?
It's such an altruistic story of my big heart. No, it's not. I got laid off from my desk job at Style in 2008 around the economy crash. Mm-hmm. And it was like, holy shit. Because my husband had just quit his job to become self-employed. So neither one of us had health insurance or money or a salary. Yeah, and so it was really out of desperation that I formed first Richmond Young Writers and then what was to become Life in 10 Minutes. Because I really didn't know what else to do. Actually, where I did take big risks that it could have gone a very different way, but I knew I couldn't work in corporate America. Mm-hmm. I did see jobs for different kinds of like copywriting, ad copy and stuff. And I knew I could probably get that kind of job and have health insurance and stuff, but I also felt like it would just kill my soul. Right. So I took the risk, and I didn't know what else to do. I had no training. I mean, I've waitressed a lot. That's my other career path. Yeah. Waffle House waitressing, or
I got it.
But
me too.
Other than that, I was like, the only thing I care about is writing and stories and hearing other people's stories and reading. And so I took the leap of trying to start a business. And Richmond Young Writers has now been around we're going into the 11th summer, although I'm no longer the director. And the adult classes started in 2010 at Black Swan Books. And it was really just that, like, oh my God, I have to work. I have to do something. Right. So that's how it started, with desperation. But it's continued for even more selfish reasons because it helps me.
Right. Yes.
And I love it. And it heals me. And it gives me a place to write and express myself. So people thank me for holding these classes, and I'm like, no, really, thank you.
That's why I say it all the time.
It's true. I'm here for me.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah. Without you, I'd just be sitting here doing this by myself.
Yeah. Well, and I wouldn't even be sitting there doing it by myself. I'd be finding
other things,
something else. I'd be like in the fridge and on Facebook, and that's it. So it's desperation and selfishness.
Wonderful. Whatever it is.
I mean,
whatever is the motivation.
Or I could also look at it as a leap of faith and then just following that spark.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's just, it is I'm a firm believer in the woo-woo-ness of, feeling energy and all of that,
For sure.
And the first time I ever walked into this space, I was just like, oh yeah, good things happen here. Important, like, hard things happen here.
People say that all the time, Erin. It's so interesting. And I think it actually predates our moving into this space. Right. There were therapists who worked, and massage therapists, and behavioral therapists who worked in this building. So I think there was a lot of healing energy already. But then, yes, the healing energy of storytelling, people feel it when they walk in. It's pretty profound. people mention it a lot, the way this space feels. And I think it's maybe not so much people's ghosts as like their, it's like the aftermath of healing and of vulnerability and sharing. And it just creates kind of this beautiful
need to reclaim and also let go.
Yeah, right.
You know, that's that sort of happens simultaneously in the process of writing your personal, you know. I really like the idea of reauthoring.
Oh, beautiful.
You know, restory is my class is restory for a reason, because we all walk in the door with the story that we've been carrying around with ourselves, and all the shit we tell ourselves our entire lives about who we are and what we're allowed to do and how worthy we are to, you know, to dream big and think that our voice is valuable. And, you know, so getting to have the privilege of reauthoring your story.
Yeah, I love it.
Is really very special. So 10 minutes. How, why, where did that come from?
Another really mystical reason here.
I'm sure.
It's what fit into the class session. I mean, you know, it was just born of pure practicality. I knew I wanted to write in class, and just the way I set it up was that we would read something, write for 10 minutes, then share, then repeat that process 3 times a class. It's just what fit. It's the way I did it the very first night of class 10 years ago. And it's just been the same way ever since. Unbelievably, it just worked. I mean, it just kind of, the format worked.
It's amazing.
So what really has surprised me is how amazing 10-minute pieces can be. How beautiful, full, how rich and deep something written in 10 minutes could be. And that wasn't the aim. It wasn't the goal. It was just kind of like a surprise result. It was like, wow. And it took me about 5 years to start the website of teaching these classes. After 5 years, I'd heard myself send that somewhere so many times to people that I decided to create a somewhere finally. And so Life in 10 Minutes became a platform for people to publish.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. You know, it's funny because in my classes, I do 10-minute meditation, and then we do 10-minute writing.
Wow.
And then we read and we talk and we kind of hash it all out. And if there's time, we write more. Yeah. But a lot of it is, you know, based in that first 10 minutes. And then we talk about what are you working on for the showcase ultimately that we do at the end of my classes. And people always ask, so I'm curious as the, you know, inadvertent creator of the 10 minutes, what you say. But, you know, in the very beginning, people always ask me, what's the 10 minutes for? What do I do with it when I'm done? Am I allowed to take it away and keep working on it? Am I supposed to just leave it? And so my response to them is that the 10 minutes is a place for you to start.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's a building block.
That's where you... and if you decide you want to leave it, fine, leave it.
Right.
If you decide you want to go home and write a novel on it, do that too.
Absolutely.
But you have to start somewhere.
Yes.
And so often that sort of inner voice that we have says, you're not worthy of writing this story.
Oh, yeah.
It feels so huge that you think, I've got to sit down and write the entire thing all at once. So 10 minutes to me feels so doable.
Exactly. It's a manageable, bite-sized
So when people ask you that, what do you say?
You know, I kind of do say it's what really fit into the format.
Right.
But I have found that some pieces really take shape and they're done in 10 minutes.
Right.
Some pieces are barely begun, and some people will never be 10-minute writers. They're never going to wrap it up with a pretty bow at the end of 10 minutes. But it's like, I do see them as quilt squares that you keep creating 10-minute quilt squares, and then you can start really piecing them together. So it's like one element. If you're going to build a house and you have 1 million bricks, you know, it's one of them.
So when you are working with new writers or people who walk in here who've never done this before and who are really scared and nervous and they have all of those sort of limiting ideas and that inner critic is really super loud, what do you tell them to kind of get them over that first step.
Oh man, they're in the right place, because we've all felt that way. I don't know many writers who haven't felt that way or don't still feel that way. It's kind of what the halfway house for writers is entirely based around, that premise of not feeling good enough as a writer. And it is the first time in class can be very scary, because you're writing something and then you're reading it right away without editing it. And I did have one writer compare it to being thrown out of a moving car. But I also truly believe that the greater the fear, the greater the benefit you receive from walking through that fear. And it's usually only very terrifying the first time, because everyone's doing it. Everyone at the table is doing it. If you are standing up alone in the front of the room and the only one doing it, that would be scary and stay scary. But because everyone is doing the same thing, it really creates safety for everyone else.
It's really interesting, because that is one of the in the If You Could See Me project, the for the shows, it's, to me, the most important part of creating those single night performances is the group process that we go through to get to that point.
Yeah, right.
Is that, it's not, people aren't just showing up off the street with a story in hand. They have gone through the process of working together, individually, together, and supporting one another and feeling as if they are part of something.
Right.
So that when they show up there that night, they're not a person with a story. They are a part of a family of stories.
Right. It makes it, you don't feel so weird and alone and exposed.
Right.
Yeah.
Ultimately that's what it is. Because you are exposing your deepest, darkest. Have you always been someone who was really comfortable with that aspect of yourself as a writer? Because you are really very revelatory about yourself and about your experiences, especially when you were younger, and it's incredible to read, but I know a lot of people would just look at that and go, how do you get to that place?
Okay, one toe at a time.
Okay, good. I'm glad that you said, I think that's important for people, because
I have not been able to naked belly flop into the pool of storytelling exposure. Really, my classes are the testing ground, and a lot of this stuff feels so shameful and so terrifying and scary to admit, and I write in my class with everyone else, and I read, and there have been many times where I've read just with burning red cheeks and sweat and fear, heart pounding, because it was really scary stuff to expose. But even though I don't get feedback, just the warmth of the group, the acceptance of the group, nobody has ever yet run out screaming. Right. And I just feel like each time I share something, it's oh, okay. And it takes away a little of the shame. Each time and so sharing in my classes, I think of that as kind of the test ground. And once I've gotten comfortable sharing in class, it's it's not so scary to take it from here to the internet. Well, it's a little scary to take it from here to the internet. And sometimes it's really terrifying. Being vulnerable doesn't feel less vulnerable.
Just because you're doing it. Right.
Yes. Yep. It's vulnerable every time, being vulnerable. Yep. But I kind of care a little less about what the response is, because I know that it's healing me. And I also kind of feel if one person responded to it, that's a miracle. And I know that it's healing me. And I just made the dedication to do one blog post a week. And I've been doing it for years now. And really what I sit down is where do I feel that kind of painful energy this week? And that's what I write about. So,
wherever that hard place is. It's like a meditation.
It is.
It is. Yeah. It's like a meditation. I feel like one of the things that I've learned throughout all of this weirdness that we are engaged in doing together, this concept of kind of just, putting it all out there, is that people feel more supported when they know you're willing to do it too.
Oh yeah.
That you're not asking them to do anything that you're not willing to do.
Absolutely.
yourself.
It makes all the difference in the world.
Right.
I really do. And I just want to say too, there are things that I haven't put
of course.
out there.
Right.
Yeah. I don't go and expose everything every time.
Right.
It's a very thoughtful decision because I do live in the world. I live with a family. I live with human beings. Right. So it's been a steady build up to kind of sharing more and more stuff. Yeah. And some of the things that would, like when I had some chapters in The Halfway House that exposed so much. The first times they were read in class, I wanted to crawl under the table and die. But now I don't even blink. Right. It's like, oh yeah, that's old hat.
Totally
I mean,
different. Right.
But so it's each time I sit down to write, it's like, can I find another level or layer to go into? Huh. And there are some undiscovered layers or places that I just haven't gone, not on the page, but in a public way. I do write about it. I just haven't published everything, right?
What?
Yeah.
No. I think it's funny because I just had that conversation with someone in one of my classes that, she was like struggling with a story to tell, and she said, I just don't know if it's ready to come out or, whatever. And I said, you know what? There are stories that I haven't told yet too.
Yeah. Right.
It's not like we decided I've told everything now, and now I'm worthy of stepping into this space as this teacher or guide or whatever. Right. It's we are along on the path too.
Definitely.
And I think that so vulnerability has multiple facets.
Yes.
There's that willingness to share your deepest, darkest stories and humiliations and embarrassments and shames and all of that stuff. And then there's the other vulnerability when you finally have reached the point that you have reached where you are an expert and people are looking to you as, and so there's this new form of vulnerability that comes by saying, I don't know everything. I don't have all the answers. Your story belongs to you. I can't tell you how to tell it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
it's true.
When someone wants you to kind of insert yourself or tell them how to, what do you feel, and then what do you say?
Well, I think it's so personal for each person. Right. I do wish there was a guidebook that said, when you were at this point, do this. This is what this is what
life,
you should do.
You mean?
Yeah, for life, but also for writing. Like this, expose this amount of yourself now.
Right.
Okay, it is time to now tell this story. None of us have that. No. We're feeling blindly in the dark.
Exactly.
To figure out what stories we tell when and what stay for us. So, I tell each person that it's really important for them. Push against your comfort zone, but gently.
That's what I
do
say
a
too.
very gentle push. You don't.
That's right.
I also say you don't have to do the full Monty all at once. Exactly. You can take one bobby pin out. You can try a little bit. Take off the sock. It's going to be different for each person where that is, and so some people will know they can write about just everything in a really juicy way immediately, and somebody being very vulnerable would be writing about having a bad hair day or something. I don't know. Just like one small, something that might be a little smaller, but it's a different line for everybody. Right. And I think there's no expert who can tell anybody where that is.
What's right for you.
It's learning to trust yourself.
That's right. Well, my God, what an important and often overlooked sort of skill to hone. Is writing is important and going to that vulnerable place, but we are socialized, especially as women, to not listen to our inner voice.
Yes.
To not trust what our instinct is telling us. To only compare ourselves to images of other people and other concepts and ideas of what we're supposed to be. And so, wow, you just sort of blew my brain up because I say, I frequently say that to people in the room. I don't want you to feel traumatized by this experience. I want you to feel as if you've grown.
Yeah.
But ultimately what you're saying is the truth. The truth of it is that you have to just learn to trust yourself.
Yeah.
And to know where the line is.
Right. And if you make a mistake about it, you go a little too far, you realize you didn't go far enough, you can always correct.
Right.
There's always more opportunities to like keep working on this vulnerability.
And it's
issue.
not a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
What, when folks are like, but I can't decide which story to tell, or I can't fit it into the 5 to 7 minutes or whatever it is, that we set as a guideline, which, is very, those guidelines are very porous. It's fine to go over.
Right.
But, I always just try to say this is not the last story you're ever going to tell.
Yeah,
Hopefully this is the first one or the beginning of something, just let's be in the moment and give ourselves that permission to just, be right where we are.
Yes.
So you are a mom, as I am a mom.
Yes.
And you are a mom to a remarkable young man. But as a writer and storyteller who shares a lot of herself and her personal sort of journey on this earth, as I do, how do you talk to your child about that? Does he pay attention to it? Does he care? Because sometimes my kids care and sometimes they could care less.
I almost have just had kind of trusted that it would be like self-selecting for him.
Sure.
Like he wouldn't go into material that like
made him uncomfortable.
I mean, he's on Facebook. He has access to my blogs, but I think he doesn't go towards them kind of instinctively, just doesn't want to. Mm-hmm. And I think that's good self-protection. He can't believe he hasn't read my books, but he's not drawn to them either, and I think that's great. Right. He can wait
my kids know
10 to 20 years.
Right, exactly.
We do speak very openly. He knows a lot about me and Stan, but we don't tell him more than kind of he's ready for or asks for. Sure. But we have pretty open conversations with him about things. But I do keep him in mind when I make a decision what to write about. And I write about him only with permission.
Right.
Because there did come a point where he was like, you can't write about me anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And it was like, oh yeah, oh my God, he's not like my thing.
Right. He's
a person. Right. And so I do try to be very sensitive to what but there's some stuff I don't think he'd enjoy reading, and I think he just decides not to.
No, I mean, I think that there is something to be said for the lack of interest that our children have in us as people beyond being their parents.
Right.
My kids are not in the least bit interested. Look, Mommy's in a magazine. We do not care.
Yeah.
Which, congratulations if that makes you happy, but we don't care.
Right.
Like, their lives are not about us.
Right.
But ultimately, we do put stuff out into the world that is really personal. I feel like it's made and I don't know if it's the oversharing, so to speak, or the way that I am in general. And I know this to be true for your son too, just because he's such an incredible activist, but just feels like it's made them more compassionate.
Yeah. And
more conscious of the existence and potential struggle of other people.
Well, I would say for my child, the things that he does pay attention to are the idea of me being a teacher and me having a blog. Mm-hmm. Even it's not the content he's interested in, it's in the structure of teaching people, of writing things that people read, of reaching people in some way. And that's he has very much created that those things for himself. I would hope that you can teach empathy and compassion and interest in other people. I hope that we have done that, but I give him a lot of credit for the things he's interested in.
Right.
I don't think there's so many things that Henry does that I don't think I can trace back to me or Stan particularly. Right. But yeah, some things. I mean, he sees both of his parents have been self-employed, and so we have to be kind of self-starters and this kind of thing. So I think that is something he's picked up on.
He does really care about other people, and I just have to believe that on some level comes from maybe not the fact that you have a business around this stuff, but just the idea that the way you talk about maybe pain or struggle or coming through difficult times is something that he then sort of is able to imprint on other people.
I'd love to take credit for that, but
you have to take a little bit of credit for your child being a decent human being. Maybe not all the credit, but certainly, just a tiny bit.
Okay.
Tiny bit. He's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
So, it's been very exciting to sort of watch that trajectory and to watch you as a parent sort of just kind of foster it through, just be like, follow it. God, you're not leading it, you're following it, but you are providing a lot of support around it as well.
He blows me away all the time. And one of the things I'm happiest about for him is that in the ways in which he isn't like me.
Right.
Oh my God.
I'm always really excited about that too. I'm like, I know when I was 12 how I would have reacted to that situation.
Oh my God, I know. Right. He's like light years ahead of, he's like giving a TED Talk at the time I was hanging Johnny Depp posters in my room. I'm like reading Sassy and Teen Bop or whatever. And he is so passionate about learning and things, and I was so passionate about like cute boys and then trying to drink and sneak out, and I'm like every day I'm like, oh my God, I don't have me, thank God. Which my mom was so mad that
she didn't get
she's mad every day.
Universal revenge.
She didn't get revenge. She's so mad. I got a kid who like, if he's hanging out at the mall, he's like, can I go to the library, please? Like, he'd rather be at the library. That's amazing. Than, I don't know.
That is so...
It's just so not... It's not me. Yay.
So how much of that do you think is... we talk a lot about, and we hear a lot about the detriment of social media and being overly connected and, it intrinsically, I think the internet is the thing, just like I think anything is a thing, and it can be used good for good or it can be used for evil.
Yeah.
But if you are inclined to do good in the world...
Yeah, it's a great tool for doing good in the world.
Right.
I think it's been huge for him to be able to, start a website and create events and start a people power page and connect with ACLU people and... I think the internet's he's used it very well. Right. Yeah. I am not going to say he doesn't also spend time doing ridiculous 14-year-old boy things.
I hope so.
He absolutely does. Of course. I think he has a good balance. Like he's not online all the time. He has found things that he loves to do that are in and of the world. Yeah. Right. But I think the internet can be used for really good things.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And, like anything, I had to go through like years of deprogramming around money.
Yeah.
And around the way I thought about money and the way I thought about what it meant to be a person with money.
Same.
And, money is a tool. It is not good or bad. Right. It is a tool, and I think of the internet in a very similar way. Right. And just like anything, you can do terrible things. We can do terrible things without the internet and without money, and so it's these things do not intrinsically have meaning. It's based in what you do with them. So we're nearing the end of our time together. I could talk to you all day, but what's next for Life in 10 Minutes, for Valley,
Yeah. Well, really exciting thing. So the press is we are coming out with our first book, other than one of my books, for Life in 10 Minutes Press. Yeah. May 2nd, Traveling the River by Hope Whitby is a collection of really gorgeous poetry.
Incredible.
Have you read it?
I've read some of her stuff, but
of course. Part of the Lit Crawl night.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
she's, oh my gosh.
I know.
Incredible.
So, she's amazing. So we're so excited to publish her book, and we're going to have a big launch party at Studio 23 May 2nd. We're super excited about that. And Our reading period for the next set of books has closed, but we're in the reading period, so that's exciting. So we have more books will be coming, and we have a retreat in August that I'm super excited about called Unearthing at Heartstone Lodge.
Where is that?
It's in Buena Vista, Virginia, near Lexington, and it's a gorgeous retreat center, just super beautiful. And we're gonna I'm really excited about that. I'm also going to Mexico again in October for another retreat there, because I couldn't leave Mexico without setting up another one. Because I was like, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving until I know I'm coming back. But the other thing for me personally is that I recently started studying Reiki and practicing Reiki. And something that I'm super excited about is combining Reiki and writing.
Yeah.
And I've been doing sessions all week, actually.
I know. I was really sad I couldn't come.
We'll schedule another time.
I need it.
We will.
I do.
We're going to do it. Okay, we'll set that up. But I have found them to be really beautifully compatible healing modalities. And I love that balance where it's not all head and it's not all body, just balancing those different parts. So I'm super excited about that.
You are of my heart.
Aww.
You are a woman who is always thinking about, doing what you do beautifully, but also what's next and how can I keep growing and expanding and, becoming myself every day. Yeah. So you're just an inspiration, and I have loved talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Erin.
And can't wait for all the what's nextness in the world.
Same.